Lord's been teaching me all week about the Va'ahafta. Yeshua said, they asked him, what's the greatest commandment? He says, the Chukat Va'ahafta. He summed it up right there, Chukat Va'ahafta. Shema is love God, and the Va'ahafta is love your neighbor as yourself. We say that every week. And I say that if you don't really respect the Va'ahafta, those words, it's easy to violate the Va'ahafta. And if you violate that Va'ahafta, in this Torah portion, 3 people violated it, and all 3 died, and didn't get to enter the promised land. So that's how I connect it to today's Torah portion, Chukat. But it's a great Torah portion, so he's been teaching me all week. If you violate the Va'ahafta, which is love your neighbor as yourself, you don't love God. You say you love God. We say we love God, but if you're violating the Va'ahafta, you don't love God. Because that's part of it. They go hand in hand. They go hand in hand. Okay? So we're going to learn about the Va'ahafta and what the Lord was teaching me this week. So we'll get started. Thank you for being here. It's a blessing today. It's Shabbat. We should lay down at night and be at peace. I had a couple nights this week where I had trouble laying down and being at peace. And it was because of our pet dog. So I'm just saying, the cares of life, we all deal with it, and we have to deal with it. It's tough sometimes. But I had a couple nights this week where I tossed and turned because I was thinking about my dog. But anyway, we'll get into that in a minute. It talks in this Torah portion about not having a blemish. Not having a blemish. 3 people in this Torah portion had a blemish. Do you know who they were? Did anybody read the Torah portion this week? It's posted on the bulletin board. We're a little different from some fellowships. We're on Chukat today, and we're talking about some things in this Torah handout. I won't not go into detail, but the first thing is called the ashes of the red heifer. So to be clean or have no blemish, you have to be sprinkled with this ashes of the red heifer. They will take a red heifer, burn it up in the ashes, and make a liquid, and sprinkle it on the priest so they would have no blemish. Okay, and this Torah portion is huge. It's all about Miriam, Aaron, and Moses. These are the 3 people that are instrumental in bringing the people out of Egypt. Instrumental. God's special people. And all 3 blew it, had a blemish. Okay, and I'm going to prove it to you as I teach. They had a blemish. They weren't able to enter the promised land. Only 2 people could go in. That was Joshua and Caleb. Those 2 words, as I end this teaching today, I'll explain Caleb's name. Joshua means he saves, but when he came back from the promised land after giving a good report, Moses changed his name to God saves. Instead, he saves. He changed it to Joshua, God saves, or actually Yeshua. If you look real deep there, it's Yeshua saves. Okay, Caleb's the other spy that went to the promised land, saw those giants, came back and said, "Oh, we can take it because God's going to do it for us. Don't worry, no worry." And do you know what his name means? Caleb's name. Caleb means dog. So this week, as we're having some issues with the dog, Lord says, that's what I want you to teach on, why they didn't get to go into the promised land. They had a blemish. So today, we don't need the ashes of a red heifer. We don't have to have this perfectly red heifer with no white hairs to burn, to be sprinkled with. Who cleanses us from all sin? Right, because Yeshua is the final sacrifice. It's the blood. They sang it. He's the final sacrifice. So I've been sent to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. That's us. and we just accept what he did for us. He gave us his all, so we have to give our all back to him. And that includes the Va'ahafta. See, if you don't obey the Va'ahafta, you don't love God. Because the Va'ahafta is part of the 10 Commandments. They're all 10 of them. First 4 or 5 are to God, and then the last ones are about your neighbor. Okay? So what happened to Miriam, Aaron, and Moses? They got upset. And see, it's called the cares of life. They had to deal with these people for 38, 40 years in the wilderness, and the people were complaining. They're leaders, and the people are complaining to them all the time, and they probably want to pull out the hair and look like this, But you know what I mean? They probably want to pull out their hair at times because these people got on their nerves. So I'm going to bring it home in a minute when I talk about our walk today, and are we honoring the Va'ahafta? See, we say, Jesus, I love you, but are we obeying the Va'ahafta? These 3 people didn't get to go to the promised land, and he's about ready within 20 years to take us to the promised land, and if we're not obeying the Va'ahafta, we don't get to go. If Moses, Miriam, and Aaron couldn't go, we won't get to go, right? I mean, that's a given. And these are the 3 biggest leaders there ever were. We're just nobody. What did Miriam do? She got upset with her brother. It's called cares of life. It's easy to get upset with people when everything doesn't go the way you planned it. See, we get up in the morning, we have a way of going about our day, and then this happens, and then this happens, and this person says this, and then this person does this, and then we get this big bill we wasn't expecting. I got a $1,000 vet bill this week. It's not in our budget. I'm telling you, it's not in our budget. Okay. Did I complain? Not one word came out of my mouth complaining about that. Now, on the way home with my wife, I was complaining a little bit. 2 people that are married, they can kind of talk between themselves a little bit, but I know Lana, she don't share anything I say with anybody else. I don't share anything she says with anybody else. So no one else heard it, so I didn't offend possibly someone else, okay? I guarded my mouth. I guarded my words. Because, see, if we are children of the King, he's our Father. He's the same for Aaron, Miriam, and Moses. The same Father. He wants the best for you. And so I shouldn't complain. The Bible teaches us, don't complain. He's our quarterback, and let's just do what he says, and he's got our back. But if the minute we open our mouth and start to complain about this person did this today, I got this bill, my insurance rates are going sky high. It's tough when you go to the store and there's 30, 40, 50% inflation for a part or something, or food or something. It's rough. So what I'm saying, the cares of life happen to everybody. It depends on how you handle it. So Moses didn't get to go to the promised land. Why? What was his blemish? He said, he was frustrated. He said, must I get water out of this rock? And then God said, well, Moses, speak to the rock. And he takes his staff and hits the rock. The first time when they had no water, he says, strike the rock. But see, God's not the same yesterday, always. You got to have a fresh word from the Lord. This time he didn't say strike the rock like he did the first time. He says speak to the rock. Why? Yeshua is the rock. That's where our water comes from. That's where our daily sustenance comes from. Yeshua was only struck one time. That's the cross. You don't strike him a second time. Okay? So, Moses couldn't go. He got frustrated with the people. Did anybody get frustrated with anybody this past week? I want to see some hands. I know I did. I got frustrated about some things going on this past week. And I promise you, if it didn't happen this week, it's going to happen next week. Remember, it was April 8th, about a month or so ago, I said because of planetary alignments with this eclipse and these planet alignments, Jupiter, the biggest ones, Jupiter, Mars, Venus, all these big planets, that, see, we are 70% water. So when these planets do this stuff, they have an effect on us. If they can affect the tides in the ocean, do certain things, they have an effect on us. So I'm saying over the next 6 months, you got to be real careful with your emotions. Real careful with your emotions, because you're going to be challenged over the next 6 months because we're 70% water. And I'm saying guard your mouth. Don't curse your neighbor. Bless your neighbor. Okay. What about, that was Moses didn't get to go. What about Aaron? Well, Aaron was on board with Miriam when it say you married an Ethiopian woman and you shouldn't have done that. They were criticizing Moses. See, they should have accepted Moses' relationship. That's a personal thing. They should have just accepted that. That's a personal thing. He married her. He was in marriage, so that's a good thing. And they should have just accepted it. But they didn't. They criticized him. And Miriam did the same thing. Miriam gets leprosy, but Aaron and Miriam die in the Torah portion today. So that's why they didn't go. Does this have an implication for us today? I'm saying it definitely does. You have to obey the Va'ahafta. And I'll get to that in a minute. So that was ashes of red heifer to be clean. So it talks about a cedar tree, hyssop tree, and scarlet wool. The cedar tree is the tallest of trees. I don't know how big those trees of Lebanon were, cedar trees that were at one time. They said they were monsters, bigger than the ones out in California. Huge trees. And so you can't be prideful like the tallest of trees. Be like the little hyssop bush tree that only gets about 2 feet tall in the wilderness. Be like a hyssop tree. Humble. And then it talks about scarlet wool. This is how they would clean the priest in the past. They have no blemish. Scarlet wool, scarlet is made from a worm. It's to be like a worm, a crimson worm, humble, with humility. And if they had been like that, they would never have said something to Moses, would they? They wouldn't have done that, okay? And then also there are 2 instances where they use a scarlet thread. That's with Rahab when she said, let the scarlet robe down, and that's where Yeshua came from. Her descendants through Yeshua, and Perez gave us Yeshua. Okay, and then Zerah. Zerah was the other son of, so he sticks out his hand when he was born. He was to be the firstborn. They tie a scarlet thread around his wrist and he pulls it back in. And out pops Perez. So that's the descendants of Perez brought us Yeshua. I would say the Jewish people, kind of the natural branch. But Zerah was descendants went to England, Ireland, all over the world. They're all over the world. And through his descendants, that's where we're grafted into those descendants. I was sent to the lost sheep, the house of Israel. That's us. Okay, that's Zerah's descendants. So that's the connection there to wool. Another thing in this Torah portion about touching a dead body, I won't go into the details. I talked about that before. But he said, God is life. God is full of life. He's not death. You don't want anything to die, any of his creatures to die. He loves life. He created it. Then it talks about the 3rd day and the 7th day. You must not have a blemish on the 3rd day of the 7th day. This really tricked me for years trying to figure out what day is he talking about here where you're not to have blemish. That's today when he's coming for his bride. He wants a bride without spot or wrinkle, right? Right? No blemish. A bride without spot or wrinkle. That's what we're going to connect all this teaching to today. They're the same day. How could they be the same day, the third day and the seventh day? The seventh day is from Adam is today. From Adam, 6,000 years. 6001 is the seventh millennium. That's within 20 years. The third day since Yeshua's death on the cross. I think there's a verse that says, I'll be gone for 2 years. I'll be back on the third day. That would be here real soon. They're the same day when you must not have blemish because he's coming to get us. And then in Numbers 19:20, it talks about if you are unclean, you will be cut off. So connect this later to the Va'ahafta and then grade yourself on how you're obeying the Va'ahafta. Because we read that every week, and it just goes like this. It did that to me. I didn't understand it. I read it, but I didn't understand it, okay? So does our Bible say once saved, always saved? Read Numbers 19:20. If unclean, you are cut off. To me, that answers the question, okay? You have a blemish. And then Miriam dies. But Miriam, they had water, 11,000 gallons of water every day, is because she sang to the rock and praised God for what he did at the Red Sea. And she did that every day. So that's why our praises here on Sabbath are so vital and so special to the Lord. I think he's looking down from heaven, and he sees his people here praising him. And he wants to open up the wells of living water in your life today. I really believe that. But it has a lot to do on your walk and what you want to believe about your walk, okay? So I think that's why this Torah portion is so good today. So, and then Moses is at Kadesh, and he says, God says, speak to the rock, and then he says, must we get water from this rock? So he's taking God's credit because God was the one that produced the water. He's the one, and he was taking credit for that. So God said, you blew it. But he was, listen, frustrated. Think about it. If these people complained to you for 38 years and you are the humblest man to ever live, and finally it gets to this point like a boiling point, and that they're giving him a hard time. And Aaron's the same way. Aaron and Moses were in it together. And they're saying, must we get water from this rock? They were so frustrated. But, pray for your leaders in Torah that they stay pure to the word and don't get frustrated. He's taught me a lot about that, and he's still teaching me. Basically, you have to do exactly what God says. If God's sharing something with you today from this teaching, and you think it's from God, then do exactly what he says, not just because I said it. Okay? Then, next thing happens in the Torah portion today is Aaron dies at Mount Hor. And then there are 3 wars. 3 wars. This is to go to the promised land. So, let's say spiritual leaders die off today in America, wherever the spiritual leaders around the world, they have blemish, they kind of die off. And then are there 3 wars to bring us into the promised land? I say they are. The first war they had was against the Amalekites. I call that World War I. Then they had to fight giants, Sihon and Og, huge giants. I think they were Amorites. That was the second war. And then the third war is next week's Torah portion. It's where they fight the Midianites at Baal Peor. At Baal Peor. And they asked Balaam to curse Israel because the Midianites see that God has just protected this huge army called Israel. 5 to 6 million people are invading the land, coming back from Egypt. He's protecting them and giving them victory over the Amalekites, over these 2 giants who are the toughest in the world. And now they're at the Midianites see them coming near their property, and they're scared to death. So they know the only way to whoop them is to get God to curse them. So it's called the curse at Baal Peor. What happened at Baal Peor? That's what's coming in America real soon. It's World War III, and it's giving in to the sexual revolution that's sweeping the world, where anything goes. As far as a man and a woman in the Bible, you're set aside for 1 year. The woman, he said, we want to get married. So the woman puts a veil. She can't see her husband for a year. They can't kiss. They can't be around each other that much. And then in 1 year, he comes, when the father tells him to go get her, he comes, and she's been chaste and pure all that time. The bridegroom then comes and gets his bride. So what about today? It's a lot different. So this is what it's called sexual sin. Read Revelation 2:14. This is what's happening right at the time of World War III. Fornication. Fornication. What is fornication? I had to look that word up 1 year. What is fornication? Intimate relationships, and you're not married. You are not married by the state law, not God's law. Oh, I'm married in the eyes of God. That doesn't get it. It says to obey civil laws in the Bible. So you got to go by the laws of the state. So when they sign off on that marriage certificate, then you're married. Okay. Prior to that, it's called fornication. Now, if you've done it and sinned, you just talk to the Lord about it. He's forgiving God. He'll forgive you if you were involved in fornication. You just promise never to do it again, and you mean it. What about adultery? You see it on TV and movies all the time. People going out with this person, and they're married, and they're going out with this person because the grass is greener over here, and the grass is greener. And one of the worst things is pornography. I'm telling you, if you have pornography in your house, you have blemish, and you're not going to go to the promised land. I'm just telling you, that is a fact. If you have pornography in your house, or you're looking at it on your computer, listen, anytime any pop-up comes up on your computer, you never click on it. If it's half this or half that, you just don't click on it, and then you're protected from that stuff, okay? I'm saying some movies, some books, and speaking bad about your neighbor. These are all things that they did at Baal Peor, and then thousands and thousands of them died. So I'm going to relate this to our sanctuary. Our house, my house, I went through my house and got rid of things that are against God. If Yeshua was to come in my house and sit down and look around, go into every room in my house, if he found a vampire movie about sucking blood, and he says, don't even touch blood, don't eat blood, and they're talking about sucking blood, these vampire movies, you get them out of your house. You have a blemish if you don't. What about movies? I used to read some Stephen King stuff, and I tell you, that's some rough stuff there. That guy's macabre is the word. Deep, weirdo. Can come up some weird stuff, okay? But it's interesting, and I liked reading it, so I got rid of my Stephen King books. I'm saying go through your house. Your house is your sanctuary. You do not want fornication, adultery, pornography, movies, books, Lashon Hara in your house. If you do, you have blemish, and you won't go to the promised land. Okay. Now, the last thing I want to talk about is the fact that we are children, sons and daughters of our King, Father God, who wants to prosper us and help us in everything that goes on every single day, no matter what the world throws at you. And Satan's going to throw some things at you, okay? A big bill, like $1,000 bill that wasn't in our budget, anyway. It's rough. But you do it. Things are going to happen. You got to learn how to handle them, okay? We're children of the King. He's going to help us. So if I had to pay extra here, He's going to save me 1,000 here. If I guard my words, He's going to save me 1,000 here. See, and don't complain against that company that charged me 1,000. You know, if my insurance goes up, find new insurance, cheaper insurance, or cut back on some of the amounts that you're protected for, or something. You got to make your budget work. And I'll get the slides on it here in a minute about this budget thing, okay? Because it's getting harder and harder for us to make ends meet. The economy is great. No, look at the pocketbook of people, and it's totally different. And they think a Savior is going to come in and save everybody. I'm telling you, that ain't going to happen, okay? He may come in, but you're still going to have to watch your pocketbook, I think. Okay. Bad things can happen each week. And it's how we react to them. The Va'ahafta depends on our blessing. What about betrayal? Did you have anybody betray you this past week? I think if God allows betrayal in your life, we are to accept it and as an opportunity to love ourselves even more. That it has no effect on us. It has no effect on us. It's their problem. If they betray you, I'm talking about the Va'ahafta, love your neighbor as yourself. The thing is, you want to lash out at them, say something ugly to them. But if you love them as yourself, the Va'ahafta, you bless them. You speak good over them. See how hard that is? You see what I'm talking about? That's hard. You bless them, okay? And then when you do that, love your neighbor as yourself, then the Lord will save you money here. You keep this car running longer. He'll do this, He'll do that, He'll bless you, okay? It's an opportunity. Betrayal is just simply an opportunity for God to prove His love in your life and love yourself more. We are children of the King. Do you have peace over any betrayals in your life? Do you have peace over them? Or are you still speaking bad about that person? If you are, that's a violation of the Va'ahafta, and you have blemish. Trust. Does it mean you have to trust these people when they kick your cat or whatever? No. Doesn't mean you have to trust. Trust is earned, okay? You have to see fruit on a tree. What about abuse? What if there's somebody in your life, father, mother, sister, brother, abusing you, a friend abusing you, but you're around them a lot and they abuse you and treat you bad? I spoke what I thought would help them, and they didn't want to hear it. Okay, we're going to talk about Caleb and the Va'ahafta. So this past week, did you quarrel with anybody? Were you agitated with anybody? Did you get upset this past week? Worried about money, like I was? Were you stubborn and mean? Did you get a little intense? Were you argumentative? Were you edgy, aggressive, or defensive? See, if you're doing these things in your interactions with people during the week, you've got blemish because you're not loving your neighbor as yourself. You'd accept them. Maybe they should listen to you, but that's up to them. If they don't want to listen, fine. But you accept them and love them and bless them the way they are. Joshua and Caleb, I started it with about Joshua and Caleb, two spies that went into the promised land, saw the giants and says, yes, Lord, we can take the land. Joshua's name means God saves or Yeshua saves. Caleb's name means dog. So this week, as I'm thinking about a little dog and the meaning of the Va'ahafta, he kind of drove it home. You know, a dog loves you no matter what. He doesn't care. He loves you no matter what. That is the Va'ahafta. That's Caleb. That's the man that got to go into the promised land. because He accepted everybody just the way they are. And if you're getting edgy with people and you're doing this with people, you've got blemish. And just repent. That's all I'd say. Talk to God about it. Hopefully, this has been a good message to you.